So hello and welcome everybody. As you know, my name is Nick, and welcome to this little presentation from Global Knowledge. Thanks very much for giving up your time in what I appreciate is probably a very busy life. What I want to try and do really is to stimulate your thoughts really on the idea of leadership and where it fits into project management, and my assertion that it's pretty key, along with many other things, of course, to making sure that we have a successful project. Leadership itself, pretty well researched and documented by many key figures, but generally this has not been particularly in the project context, so tend to be in other areas, in leadership in war, in peacetime, in government, in business as usual, in the commercial sense. And I wanted really more to kind of look at it from a project context. Where does it fit in, and in particular make it something which is kind of usable for those who are actually running projects or involved in and around projects in organizations. And so really make sure we understand what the context of a successful project is. So what does it really mean when we talk about successful projects? Who's involved, what are the kind of key members that we might have in the project management team, and where do they fit into all this? The Project Management Institute, which many of you may have heard of, maybe even be members of, based in the US, states that successful project management requires strong leadership through all phases, especially to communicate the vision and inspire teams to perform well. But closer to home, the Association of Project Managers sees the role of leadership in a project promoting and maintaining the project vision, teamwork, and positive relationships throughout the project and into the wider stakeholder community. And Prince 2 looks at the role of the project board to provide leadership and direction, really reinforcing both those other statements. So, firstly then we're going to be thinking about project success. What does this mean, and how do we kind of measure it? And then we can use that as a backdrop to where leadership might contribute toward that success. I also want to bring in as well causes of project failure, just to make sure that we can also weave those into where leadership might help to stop those from happening. I'm very conscious that this is not just about leadership, that there is project management, so management is an important element of this as well, and kind of do we know what the difference is? And so I'll kind of have some kind of examples of what the difference between the two is, and then how we might be combining both leadership and management into our project, and look at the project in its various phases or stages, through kind of starting up and preparing, through lead planning, delivering the products, and then closure, and then subsequently after the project is closed. Where does leadership and management fit in, and what's the kind of bias, perhaps? I then want to have a look at the various roles that we have in the project management team, from the project board through project manager, team managers, team members, maybe even considering the wider stakeholder community, people who are in and around the project who may well be able to provide some form of leadership to support the project. And then lastly, since we're talking about leadership and how we might like to use it, perhaps give you some guidance, maybe a few guiding principles on leadership in projects. Something which you might then want to consider, look at yourself, look at your teams, and see whether or not you can improve leadership within your projects. So then, project success. So there's a lot of talk about project success, and generally we get it from two main viewpoints. The project itself and the team members within the project management team, those actually delivering the products, and those who are receiving those products, receiving the new system, the new building or whatever. They have a view of what project success means. So from the project point of view, it's really about delivering what the business has asked for within time and cost. So really meeting the business's expectations, fulfilling their requirement, making sure we understand what that requirement is, and then being able to communicate that to the right people and delivering the project product, which should equate to what the business asked for. The corporate view, which then kind of really needs to be added to the project element, is that has the project really delivered something which the business can use to improve the business, the way it works, the way it operates, so faster, more flexible, more efficient, whatever that happens to be. And of course then we can realize the benefits from these improvements, these outcomes that we've been aiming for as a business. And this of course needs to be done without undue risk to the organization, and of course must all be looking toward our strategic objectives as an organization. So these together really then constitute our 6 objectives, which taken from Prince 2, but are pretty well understood generally. But starting off then with time. So time is a key objective, which, having agreed with the organisation, we should be looking to agree within a particular time scale. And this may be driven by some kind of deadline or launch, or maybe replacing some kind of a system which becomes unsupportable after a particular time. We've then got cost, so an agreed cost. This may be as a result of limited funding, so perhaps a charity or whatever, there's only so much money which is available. Or alternatively, it must be maybe that the money needs to be spent by a particular time, perhaps as a result of a grant, or perhaps the way of the funding arrangements, particularly in public sector. So therefore, we need to make sure that we spend that money within the project. Scope, remember, this is the sum total of all the project's products or deliverables, so everything we're going to be delivering, and this needs to be agreed by the business, by the customer. And this then is going to be something which is going to enable the change to occur in the organization. So delivering the right system with the right component parts to an organization will then allow the organization to utilize that system effectively and help the organization to change and result eventually in the benefits, perhaps the more effective or efficient way of working. Quality based around the products and deliverables. Are they to the agreed level of quality? So it's important that when we're describing what the customer wants, that we understand the level of quality that we need. Risk, we need, of course, to make sure that we only take the agreed level of risk, because the business, of course, is committing to this change and the project, and we want to make sure that the business doesn't take more risk and therefore put itself in a difficult position in order to get the change. This risk, this level of risk, generally matches corporate risk appetite. So how much risk does an organisation generally happy to accept? Some organisations are very happy to accept risk, by their very nature, financial institutions and such like. Alternatively, people might be quite risk averse. So people such as the airline industry, aircraft industry, nuclear industry tend to be more risk averse. Most organisations tend to be somewhere in the middle, and it's going to be your project board, your key stakeholders will help you understand the level of risk you need to be working at. Then we've got the expected benefits. So these benefits are what we expect as a result of the project delivering the scope to the right level of quality. And so therefore, it's very much influenced by that scope and quality, and if we don't get those right, then we must be careful not to expect the benefits. But the benefits themselves, of course, are absolutely what this is all about. And in many ways, from a business point of view, as I mentioned before, this is what they constitute or see as project success. Did we actually get what we wanted as a result of introducing this change? Most of these, so all of these objectives then will be used to help us measure our performance. We'll probably use some kind of tolerances to define them to make sure that we're not too specific. And we'll need, of course, to make sure that we put them in the right priority. So is time most important, or is it cost, or is it not taking too much risk? Is that the most important thing? And remember, of course, that these may change as we go through the project, but we'll certainly need to consider them and understand them initially. And of course, that's very much up to the project manager to work with the key stakeholders to make sure we understand what they are and get them signed off. Now, projects, of course, do fail, and it's important to learn lessons from them, and from that, of course, we can then make sure that we avoid failure as best we can in the future. And as a project manager, that's something which you're going to have to weave into your project. So, firstly, then, ill-defined objectives. So, clearly important at the beginning, the objectives we've just been looking at, that we understand what they are, and we get them signed off by the business, by the organisation. These, of course, will be very much linked with our future, the future version of what we're going to be moving to, the new system, the new building, whatever it is. And if we don't understand these, then it's going to be very difficult for us to actually, firstly, measure how well we're doing, and secondly, understand if we've been successful. Poor planning, often due to either having insufficient time to do it effectively or an inability to plan effectively, so not really understanding how to go about it, not really utilising tools and techniques effectively, and again, you as a project manager need to kind of make sure that we've got all those things available and our teams are trained to be able to do it. Poor communication from the very beginning, making sure we communicate well with our stakeholders to understand what it is we've got to deliver. Then through the project, ensuring that good communication at all levels, particularly from team manager upwards to project manager, that we're able then to monitor and control as necessary. But not forgetting, of course, the wider communication across the organisation. And if we don't do this, then either you're uninformed, you're not making the right decisions as a day-to-day level in a project, but also then at project board or organisational level, they're not able to make decisions based on any timely and accurate information. Change, of course, on a project is not necessarily bad, because we expect, as with all projects, there will be some change, whether that's deliberate by the organisation or the kind of users, business, but also potentially forced on us by events surrounding the project. However, these things can be controlled. It's uncontrolled change, so things like scope creep, which cause us then to have problems, and people like the project board can provide the leadership to make sure we implement good change control procedures which prevent people from interfering in the project and introducing scope creep. Also helping you as a project manager to manage those controlled changes. So deciding on what we're going to do, if necessary, adjusting the vision to suit what we've now had to change to. Risk management, again, making sure that we learn from our experiences, and not just from one project to another, but within the project, and then making sure that we weave in this information as we go along from stage to stage. We can improve our chances of success. A good organisation. So if we don't have a good organisation, we don't really understand who the key stakeholders are, who the project sponsor executive is, who the users of the organisation of the project's products are. So who's going to take the new system and make it work and bring our benefits and realise our benefits. It's going to be difficult for us then to make sure that we're making the right decisions, that we have got the right leadership of the project. Similarly, down through project manager, team manager, to make sure that people know what their responsibility is and who's accountable to who. And lastly, ill-defined resources. This is particularly relevant to large organisations who tend to lend people from one department to another in order to support projects, which is fantastic until the priorities change, and then suddenly the project finds itself without some of its resources. So important to make sure that the business is committed to providing those resources, whether that's through some form of matrix management or resource management systems, which can be reasonably effective, or the business actually providing the resources, or the project actually paying for those resources and having them as part of the project. So things to consider when we're looking at running and managing and leading our projects. So in that context, where does leadership management come in? What's the role of the leader? What's the role of the manager? Well, really we're looking at a leader providing the kind of what and the why. What are we going to deliver and why are we doing it? So giving it that kind of long-term view. The reason we're doing this is because we need to change, and these are the benefits we're going to get if we do effectively change. The manager, rather than the what and the why, is going to be concentrating more on the how and the when. So how are we going to deliver the products, and when are they going to be delivered? Probably also the how much. The leader tends to provide and think about direction, the effectiveness of what we're going to be delivering, and the purpose of the product. The manager looking more at the speed, the efficiency, and the quality of what we're going to deliver. The leader very much about influencing people, particularly face-to-face. So making sure that the business, the organisation are committed into the project. Manager, more about controlling against either a specification or a quality criteria, or against a plan. The leader looking particularly at the purpose, realizing the value of what we're going to be delivering. The manager focusing on the task, the delivery, and the processes. Leaders tend to innovate and develop. Managers tend to administer and maintain. And just to kind of sum it up to a certain extent, the leader has an eye on the horizon, whereas the manager tends to have the eye on the bottom line. Both of these areas are needed in the project, within and around the project. So they're not mutually exclusive, they are different, but they're both needed, and as such, all elements of the organisation will need to be able to lead and manage. So what about combining leadership and management together in a project? So as a project manager, we'll tend to think of it from that point of view, but it applies just as much to those people at project board level, at team level, as it does to the project manager. So we need to utilize, and what I'm going to do here is talk about it from working through a kind of project management process to help us to see the relative importance or bias of either leadership or management in those particular areas. So in starting up, so preparing for the project, in project preparation, then it's very much about making sure we understand what that vision is, and that's going to be coming predominantly from our key stakeholders, particularly the business itself, the executive or sponsor, the users, because remember that the users are going to be providing this vision of the new future with this new system or the new building or whatever it is that we're delivering. They are going to be saying, if this is in place, then I can work in this particular way, and the business will be improved, so our outcomes. And we can measure that improvement through what are the benefits. So perhaps increased flexibility, more efficiency, so we can manage more customers using the same amount of staff. And this, of course, through the business is then linked to our strategic objectives. Within this process, we're going to be bringing all our stakeholders together, trying to make sure that we are then working towards a common cause. So we're building a kind of team of the project as a whole, particularly at the higher level, to make sure that we've got that set of people to provide that leadership throughout the project as necessary, and we've got a clear understanding of vision. We're going to be thinking about how we're going to communicate throughout this to make sure that we are able to collect the knowledge, the understanding of where we are now and what the future vision, the future state will be, because of course the difference between the two will be what the project is going to do. And this helps to bring clarity to what we're thinking about, providing that clear vision and some clear objectives as to what the project should be able to deliver. This is going to be predominantly about leadership. There is an element of management in here, but most of this is about leadership, about identifying that vision. And as a project manager, you'll be working with these key stakeholders to bring this vision to life to a certain extent, helping them all to decide on what it is that's required. This then will lead through into the planning, into the initiation of the project, so IP, where predominantly we're going to be building the project plan. This then will be helping us to identify how the steps we're going to be taking to deliver that future vision. Plus, of course, setting the way in which we're going to provide direction for the team, putting in place governance. Remember, we're going to be trying to manage by exception as best we can, and so therefore this all needs to be put in place. So things such as how we're going to communicate, how we're going to manage risk and change, how we're going to manage quality. We'll also need to think about for our team how we're going to train everybody to make sure that everybody's able to do their job effectively at this point. So the focus is starting to move more away from leadership into management, but nonetheless there's still an element of leadership in here, because as with startup in the end of IP, in the planning phase here, we are going to be confirming that the business case is still valid, still viable, and of course leadership will be needed to make sure that we link then that business case with our strategic objectives. Once we've completed our planning, we're then moving on to the delivery element. So we're now starting to build the products based around that plan. That plan provides a predictability, a stability to the project. Okay, we're going to be monitoring and controlling what we're doing, making sure that we are actually delivering as or in accordance with that plan. This, of course, is mostly management. So this is about the how and the when. However, during this period, of course, there may be elements of change. So therefore, if things have to change, we are going to have to utilize our leadership to try to ensure that that change either continues to provide the vision that we want to achieve and the benefits, or are we going to have to reinvent the vision? And if necessary, that's going to involve the wider stakeholder group that you're going to be facilitating to make sure that they understand what the change is going to be and to get agreement on what the new vision is going to be, and then that's going to have to be communicated across the piece to ensure that everybody then understands what's going to be delivered and what the benefits are going to be. When it comes to closure, then of course initially this is going to be very much management, because of course it's about counting up, have we delivered the project's product, the right level of quality, has it been accepted by the customer against our acceptance criteria, paperwork, so tidying up some kind of end project or post-implementation review, learning our lessons. But this then will be linking very quickly into post-project. And whilst the project is complete, the project success is still going to be being measured predominantly through the outcomes, so how well are the project's products, the new system or building being utilized by the business, by the organization. Clearly, if we have a new building and we don't occupy it, then we're not likely to get any of the benefits. So it's important to make sure, and it's up to the stakeholders, key stakeholders, to ensure that the business is ready for the change, and that then they go on and implement that change based on what the project has delivered. If this occurs and works well, then we stand a good chance of realizing our benefits, our kind of final objective. And so closure and post-project tend to be more erring towards leadership rather than fully management. Who's involved? Well, we've got the kind of main levels that we tend to have in the project, that of the project board or steering committee, the project manager, team managers or the team itself, and there may not be team managers, but people working directly into the project manager. And of course, we've got the wider stakeholder community. There's key stakeholders within the business or the organization. So project board, of course, key to providing the vision and aligning those benefits to the vision, and the vision actually contributing toward the strategic objectives. So they're providing the big picture from which we can then communicate this down through into the project. They provide direction during the project, and if necessary, agreeing to change and redefining our vision if necessary. Providing support to the project manager to ensure that the project manager has everything that they need in order to be able to carry out the delivery of the project's products. Providing advice and guidance. Communicating with the wider stakeholder community to make sure that we are continually aware of the outside world and the project is going to be able to provide the right products at the right level of quality in order to get those benefits. So ensuring that we're continuously aligned with the benefits. The project manager, translating that kind of vision, bringing it down to their level, to their day-to-day level, to make sure we understand how we're going to be delivering that, and communicating that down then to the team, and making sure they understand what's happening, where we fit in, what's going on, that we're not just a kind of cog in the wheel, we're a part of something bigger, and our contribution is important. Making sure that team managers understand exactly what's required, leading by example on your part, providing advice and guidance, training and mentoring for particularly team managers or key members of your team, looking to the future. Team managers, pretty much the same kind of thing as project manager, but at a lower level. Again, it depends on how big the team is, but we must always be conscious, even at team level, that those subordinates will need to be nurtured and brought on throughout. The wider stakeholder community, providing that understanding of what's going on, the big picture. Clearly, the project board and steering committee are going to be a part of this, but they can provide much clearer understanding for the project manager of the kind of overall standards that will require within leadership or the governance of projects, and providing a better understanding of how the change is going to fit into the organisation. So now that I hope that I've given you or persuaded you perhaps that leadership is a pretty important element of projects, perhaps we'd like to have a look at some principles that might be useful for developing leadership, particularly within the project. And of course, we're looking predominantly at yourself as a project manager. But remember that this is something which you must also be considering in the light of your team managers, your team, and of course also perhaps giving a bit of advice and guidance to the project board, the sponsor, on how they provide leadership within projects or toward projects. So there are 11 guiding principles, or 11 that I could think of, and I've taken these a bit from my time when I was in the military, where we spent a lot of time looking at leadership in lots of different circumstances, and I've tried to make sure that they're applicable to your circumstances rather than just the military one. So starting off then, really looking at know yourself and seek self-improvement. So clearly it's important as an individual, as a leader, to make sure you understand what your weaknesses are. A lot of us are very big on how good we are, but remember to look critically at yourself and make sure we understand what we might not be good at. Be honest with yourself. This can, of course, if you're not particularly good at doing this kind of thing, you can identify your weaknesses through going on training, through experiences that you've had, so learning from your experiences, discussing things with other people, kind of 360 reviews with both the kind of sponsor or executive or stakeholders, and also with team managers. So it may be useful for you to see how they think you lead, how well you do things, and you can put things right from there. Plenty of advice and guidance around, and particularly kind of best practice management practice can help you with this kind of thing. Nextly, be technically proficient. So we're not talking necessarily here about being technical from an IT point of view, or whatever it is that you do. This is more about being a project manager, being a leader. So do we understand about things such as requirements capture, how planning works, about monitoring and controlling projects, the application of quality, what about change control, risk management procedures, how does this work, how to be a good communicator. Plus, of course, all the different elements of leadership that we're talking about here, and make sure that you're going to be proficient at those. Don't forget, of course, it's not just about you. You need to also understand about the roles and responsibilities within the project. So what about team managers? What responsibilities do they have? What about project assurance? What about project board? So do understand exactly how they operate, what they do, particularly the project board, of course, because often you may have to make some decisions for them. So being in their mind, recommending to them, helps a lot to understand, if you understand how they work. And generally, if you're able to do this effectively, then that tends to foster respect from those people, and as such that helps everything to run much more smoothly. Seek responsibility and be accountable. So do take on projects, do take on extra work if necessary, extra duties, extra assistance training that is going to contribute to your development. And often you'll be surprised how well you do at these things, and of course whilst it may seem a little frightening and disconcerting initially, pretty soon you'll step up to that next level of performance. Remember to try and widen your performance, your knowledge as much as possible. Do everything to the best of your ability. I know that goes without saying, but if we do, then that generally leads to greater opportunities. We will certainly need to stand up for what we think is right here, particularly in the event of the project board not agreeing with you. Tell the truth, particularly if the truth happens to be a bad message or an unwelcome message to your superiors, even also for your subordinates. Eventually people will get over it and they'll be pleased that you told the truth nonetheless. Remember, carefully look at your subordinates, particularly if things have gone wrong. Make sure that you aren't actually part of the reason why they failed. And if so, then make sure you deal with that. Make sure that you're there to ready to take initiative, but make sure this is always going to be based around achieving project success. So know and understand what your goals are and what your tolerances are. Then we've got make sound and timely decisions. So clearly within projects, decision making is essential at all levels, not least at the project manager level. Though you're not going to necessarily be making the key decisions on the project, you will be making the ones that help the project run day to day. And what we're going to do then is make sure that we've got plenty of, if we do this well, we get good integrity on the project, it becomes predictable, and we get stability because people know what's going to happen and how the decisions are going to be made. Important to quickly assess what's happened, if there's any changes that need decision making, and make that decision as quickly as you can. Of course, making sure that we assess the situation carefully. This will then provide confidence with your team that they know that the decision is going to be made and provides predictability for them so they can get on with their work. Don't forget, of course, to take advice and suggestions from those around you, particularly team managers and team members, and also particularly from those people who are likely to be affected by the change or that decision. Also remember to announce decisions as quickly as you can within reason, because of course others will need to react to those decisions and implement them. So don't leave the decision to the last minute, because it may mean that people don't have time to actually implement your decision. Ensure everybody understands all the procedures, particularly for change control and risk management procedures. This will help them then understand how decisions are being made. Remember to consider the effects of your decisions on all stakeholders, not necessarily just within the project, but on the wider stakeholder community and on the objectives of the project. We've got to set the example. So this is you setting an example. So it's pretty easy once you become a project manager, you're in charge now, and so it's quite easy to get to the point where you say it's kind of do as I say, not do as I do, and nothing really puts your team off quite as quickly as saying that kind of thing, even though you might not say it literally. You might like to consider making sure that you're always properly turned out, well groomed, keeping healthy and fit. Maintain an optimistic outlook is a very useful thing here. So we are being optimistic on the project rather than pessimistic. Make sure that your own personal habits don't really get or become on display and then open to criticism. Try to avoid favoritism and being too pally with people, particularly your subordinates, okay, because eventually this will cause problems. So familiarity breeds contempt. We have to be careful not to fall into that trap. Do get involved though. If things are difficult, particularly for a particular team, you might like to go and help, provide encouragement. So people working at weekends, late or whatever, if there's a problem, then make sure you're there to share in that hardship. And as best you can, by example, show that you're the best at what you do. You can't necessarily be better than some of the particular specialists, technicians, engineers, because of course that's what their real specialty is. But you can certainly be involved and make sure you've got a very good understanding of what they do. Make sure that we do delegate authority, okay, because this then shows you trust those people. Okay, avoid over supervision, no long screwdrivers, okay, and this then, as I said, shows trust in them, and it gives them then the ability for them to lead at their level, the flexibility to do what they need to do to get their particular part of the job done. We need to make sure we build a team. Okay, again, it goes without saying that the team is important, but the team is not necessarily just a collection of people. If we work them well together, then generally they end up being greater than the sum of their parts. And as a leader, you need to create a team as best you can out of what's available that's going to be suitable for delivering the project's objectives. For this, you need, of course, the right kind of personalities and skills and talent. Once you've got the right kind of people together, as best you can, then you really need to make sure, or you insist on people working as a team and encourage this as much as possible. So through some kind of team building and meetings or things like that. Try to make sure that you maintain stability. So try to avoid changes to teams, to the team leaders and key roles within the project. Because of course, the more we change, the more we disrupt that teamwork, particularly at their level. Try to train teams together if you can. It doesn't have to be very complicated. It could just be for an hour, something which you're doing yourself to make sure people understand what's going on, a particular skill or technique. You might do team building, so specific team building exercises. I can hear everybody sighing and saying, oh my goodness me. But these things don't have to be complicated or unpleasant. You don't have to sit in a hole in the ground in the North Yorkshire moors in the rain. There are other things which can be done. Just getting people together, challenging them, getting them to work together to achieve something helps them to understand each other much more clearly, and they will then tend to work together more effectively. It goes without saying, never publicly blame individuals or praise them, particularly. So it's about the team being successful and the team not doing as well as anticipated. And then they can work together to deal with the situation. Know your team, your individuals, and look out for their well-being. Our next area to think about. So this is really kind of making sure we know and understand those people that are working in your team. And generally when you understand them, they then begin to trust you more. They'll want to work harder and potentially go that extra mile, which we're always looking for, of course. You might like to consider getting to know individuals in a reasonable way. So that's predominantly going to be talking to them, working with them, and sharing with them information. So you're going to be looking at for things which you might be able to utilize, such as birthdays, family information, what their interests are, key events in their life. And this we can utilize in the future to show that we are taking an interest and we know and understand how they're working. Do try to be approachable, get involved in discussions, have a bit of banter with people if you're able to, but again, be careful not to try to be their mate, because this does eventually become a bit corrosive. Look out for individual problems that harm people's performances. So again, just as a good leader, sickness, travel, family life. Is there anything which we could view or adjust to help them to be more effective? That's as an individual. Also look at the team as a whole. How are they working? Are they working well together, or have they got the right kind of personalities? Do they have the right training and talents and skills? Are particular teams under a lot of stress, whereas others are not so? Can we help them? Can we reassign, if necessary, for short periods of time, team members? Do make sure that we're going to reward people and teams that it is fair and equal as best we can within reason, and encourage individuals to grow. It doesn't have to be big and complicated, but helping people, training them and mentoring them. Because remember, of course, that these people are the future of your organization, and we want to make sure that they're going to be useful. Keep your team informed. Okay, it does go without saying, but it's easily forgotten that we don't keep people in the loop, that they don't really understand where they fit in the big picture, what they're contributing. Then they tend to feel they're just some kind of cog in a big wheel, and really it doesn't really matter much what we do. Well, it does, of course, because they're the building blocks of what we're actually achieving. And generally informed individuals tend to work much better and more effectively. You might consider maintaining good communications with the team without undue frequent meetings. So you can have meetings, making sure that we've got different ways of communicating. Make sure you go and talk to people, visit the teams. I'm sure that this is the kind of thing you do anyway. Make sure we pass on any changes to rules, regulations, corporate policy quickly and easily so they can integrate with what's going on. Make sure that the information is being passed down. So if necessary, when you're visiting teams, make sure that what you've been passing down has actually got to them. Publicize any team successes or project successes. This helps then to build morale. Be pretty ruthless at replacing rumor with truth, okay, when you hear it, but also providing some form of information or tool that people can look at in order to clarify whether something is rumor or truth. So things such as a website, that type of thing, but we might also consider some form of social media, such as Facebook or Twitter, that can help people then to keep up to date. Developing our sense of responsibility. So it's a responsibility in your team. So make sure then that we, by assigning tasks and delegating responsibility to the teams, this is a very good way of promoting mutual respect and confidence between you, the project manager, and those team members. Make sure that everybody understands what the kind of chain of command is, so how responsibility has been delegated down, and how we report up if we've got a problem or a concern. We should generally try to manage by exception, giving people clear goals. Okay, yeah, I'll see you, Sarah. Give people guidance and advice freely, and try to avoid criticizing people openly. Make sure that we learn lessons from those things. Delegate work effectively. Again, I think really this should be done using management by exception. Clear instructions using some form of work package or document so that everybody knows what to expect. give people tolerances to work within, encourage people to question and clarify what it is they are required to do, monitor that progress, and give support and advice and guidance. Make sure you use your team within its own capabilities, so don't try and get them to do things which they are generally not able to do, and that way then we're likely to be more successful. So in summary, I hope this provided a bit of food for thought about where leadership fits in with projects and how it can contribute towards its success. It's going to be a combination of leadership and management, of course, but often the accent is on management rather than leadership, and we need to make sure the leadership is properly addressed as well. We saw where the various key people fit in. You as a project manager are going to be a hub around all of this, and you're going to be either providing advice and guidance or training people, developing people in leadership. And I've given you a bit of some ideas, some areas where you might like to consider developing your own leadership to improve yourself and, of course, your project success.